I've just gotten back from Token 2049 in Singapore, and I have some really important Altseason Alpha that I gathered while being there that I thought was actually pretty interesting. So I want to go over that today, as well as going over everything that we're seeing happening in the market, because we have seen a very wild couple of days here in the world of crypto, from everything from massive pumps to a little bit of a dump that we've seen in recent days, but things still looking pretty good. So, and then we're going to tie this in with everything that we had heard from the Token 2049 conference within Singapore, and then we'll kind of try and map it all together to see where we could see alts going towards the end of the year. So let's go on ahead, we'll dive right on in. First off, taking a look at the crypto bubbles, we can see a little bit of a red day, as I mentioned, in the market. This is not really too concerning or too surprising, just because we have seen a really green week. We are also seeing BNB doing very well, continues to make more and more all-time highs, which is pretty impressive there. But overall, a little bit of a pullback in the market, but again, as I mentioned, not anything too scary, is at least as far as I'm concerned. If we do look at the Bitcoin chart, we can see we were really pushing towards the top of the Bollinger Bands, at least here on the 4 hour. We can see we've actually pulled down and we've hit the bottom of the Bollinger Band here now, seeing a little bit of that kind of reversion to the mean. Now, if we look at the trade we have open here on Bitcoin, down a little bit from where we were at yesterday, but still up a decent bit in profit here. And so I've already taken profits, so we're just kind of sitting here waiting to see kind of what the next play is. Maybe we'll start to see, if we continue to see a break below this level, I may secure some more profit here, or actually potentially even just close the trade, because we might see a little bit of a retrace back here. But again, at least as of right now, haven't really seen anything too concerning that wouldn't indicate we see a further potential move to the upside. So if you are interested, of course, I do have those links in the description below. If you do want to get started trading, this felt like a pretty easy trade here to make. And so if you're interested in keeping up with kind of future trades that we make, you can feel free to do so. Now, moving along, I wanted to show some other news that we have today, because the news that we have is very important for the markets. We can see here S&P unveils a digital markets 50 index tracking, which tracks cryptos and blockchain stocks. So we can see here we have a whole bunch of different things. We can see a bit of a overview of some of the ones that we've got in here. We've got Bit Digital, Hut8, we've got Coinbase, PayPal, Shopify, Riot, Block. I mean, a whole bunch of different ones here. Many of these you may recognize if you've been involved within the crypto space. They also have 15 cryptocurrencies as well. So that is another thing that I think is pretty interesting as well. I don't think that we have the list of the cryptocurrencies quite yet, but a pretty nice ETF or index being created here, which I think is very important. This continues to show that institutions are moving along and continuing to adopt crypto. Now, this was actually kind of tying into some of the main takeaways that I had from the Token 2049 conference. The biggest thing that I saw is there is a massive showing of institutional money coming. There's a lot of people trying to figure out, kind of what is next in terms of how they bring their institutions on chain, right? So there was a lot of talks about payment networks. There's a lot of talks about tokenization. There was lots of talks talking about stable coins, a lot of this type of stuff, which may not seem super sexy when we're talking about altcoins and things like that. But that was the major thing that people really seemed to be interested in, was how do we get a lot more of this institutional adoption? And I do think a lot of this institutional adoption is going to come primarily through tokenization and stable coins. Payment networks kind of following after those two main ones. So that's a lot of what we saw there. The other thing that I saw as well, lots of money being thrown out by exchanges. That to me shows that we're still in kind of this choppy season. Exchanges are the ones with the money right now. We did see a handful of projects here and there, but currently where we're at here is, we're still working within kind of a choppy season where there's not still a whole lot going on here. Now, moving along, I also had a couple of different things I want to show you as it relates to the market and to some of the charts that we have here, because you can see actually that we will have seen, or we'll see some of this kind of actually happening real time in the charts. So we can see the ETH Bitcoin, we've done a little bit of a grind up here, but nothing too crazy like this breakout that we saw here. market's just kind of been churning and burning a little bit, which again, nothing too bad, nothing too crazy. We also can see here a little bit that Bitcoin dominance has continued to slowly grind up as well. So what this means to me is that Bitcoin dominance is continuing to rise as a percentage of the market, right? So Bitcoin compared to everything else is getting bigger. We also can see on ETH Bitcoin that ETH is outperforming Bitcoin relative, at least again over the past couple of weeks. So what this means is that ETH is outperforming even Bitcoin. So what this means, kind of to consolidate all of it into a summary here, is that we are seeing Bitcoin outperform the market as a whole and ETH outperform Bitcoin, meaning that altcoins generally are actually really not doing too well. They're struggling a little bit, while Bitcoin is doing well relative to the rest of the market, and ETH is doing better than Bitcoin. So I do think that this does kind of speak to some of the position that we are in. We are seeing Ethereum do very well. We're seeing Bitcoin do well. We're seeing things like BNB do very, very well. But in over a large scope of the altcoin market, we're not really seeing too much happening here. And so it is very important to understand what kind of comes next here, right? We haven't really seen that rotation into some of these larger altcoins. I think it's starting, but we haven't seen a lot of that yet, and we could see it here just by the charts that we saw. Ethereum continuing to do well, Bitcoin continuing to do well, but again, if Bitcoin is rising as a share of the market, that means something else has to be losing, right? And it's obviously not ETH, so it's going to be kind of a lot of the other altcoins within the space. Now, of course, as I mentioned, we do have some others that are performing well, but that's not all of them. And so that's the other thing that I was noticing when we were at Token 2049 is there's not a lot of altcoin action going on here. Most of it is very much focused on institutions. It's very much focused on kind of a lot of the boring stuff, so to speak, right? In more frothy times in the market, there's going to be particular projects shelling out a lot more and looking to get that visibility, which we did not really see at all at this conference. So I found that quite interesting. That to me means that we can see clear as day from a fundamental perspective that alt season is inching closer and closer, but it's probably not here yet, and it might not even be on the horizon, meaning that we'll see it eventually, but it's probably not happening imminently. I also think this makes sense when we look at it from a wider perspective. The one thing that I look very, very closely at is kind of the overall sentiment, right? We're seeing a lot of very bullish sentiment for Ethereum. We're seeing a lot of people calling the tops for Bitcoin. There's a lot of this stuff happening right now where usually it moves in the opposite direction of the market, right? So if people are calling tops for Bitcoin, it wouldn't surprise me if we continue to see Bitcoin go higher. If people are already calling for $15,000, $20,000 Ethereum, we might see a sustained pullback from Ethereum potentially. Again, we don't know for sure, but generally if you move in the opposite direction of what the majority of the market is saying, it tends to work out all right. And one of the things that we have to actually kind of prove this out is if we go look at CoinGlass and we take a look at the liquidation map, that we've been using this for months now. I'll actually show you right here. We've been using this for months now, and it has been almost always consistently correct. So here we can see on the Bitcoin exchange liquidation map, there are a lot of shorts piling in as we've seen this move down from Bitcoin. That does mean that we could potentially see a move back to the upside. However, as you will know, we are looking for confluence between all three time frames. As you can see immediately, we do not have that. We do have a bunch of longs to be liquidated down here to the downside, potentially going as low as 115,000. And then if we see the 30-day, we also can see a bunch of liquidations here down to the downside. Again, about 115,000, seeming to stick out as a spot where we can see a decent bit of longs liquidated. So we'll have to see. We'll be keeping a very, very close eye on this. But based on what we're seeing here on the hourly, if we go back to the Bitcoin chart, we can see based on the 4 hour, maybe things looking a little bit overextended from the Bollinger Bands perspective, but definitely not from the RSI. If we go look at the daily, you will see we're actually pushing very, very high outside of the Bollinger Bands here, even showing overextended on the RSI. When we see this type of stuff, of course, usually that means we are probably going to see a bit of a pullback. We've seen a pretty abrupt pullback happening here over the past day. We'll have to see if we see a further sustained push to the downside, or if we do see that bounce. I do think if we saw even a pullback all the way down to 116, that would not be super concerning, just because we've seen such a violent move to the upside over the past 7 to 10 days. We could see that pullback and then potentially a bounce here. That I think would look totally fine, because we would be bouncing essentially off a previous high, which would not be much of a concern, I think, to many people within the market. So overall, that's a quick update on what we have today, what some of the main takeaways were from Token 2049, how a lot of that kind of narrative actually fits within some of the actual hard data we're seeing within the market right now. That's what we've got. I hope that you found the information in this video useful. If you did, of course, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you are interested in trading and you are looking to, kind of act on some of these potential things that we are seeing within the market, you can feel free to use my links in the description below. BTCC currently does have the best sign up bonus with a 10% bonus on first time deposits, which is a fantastic deal. If you are looking, or if you are interested in signing up for any of the others, of course, you can feel free to do that as well. All of them do have really, really great deposit bonuses and trading bonuses if you are looking to get involved. So feel free to take a look at those if you are interested. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.